Hey, Jonathan.
Hi.
Hey, Jonathan, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Welcome. Hey, Olivia. Hello, Alita. You've always,
Hi.
you've always got a really low angle on your phone. It's looking
It's
up
my
at you.
computer. The camera's in the bottom left corner.
Olivia, you've got tons of backlighting. If you could pull that shade behind you, you wouldn't be popping in and out of vision so much.
Got it.
Hello, Julia. I fear that you really live in that room, Julia, because like every time I've seen you in the last 6 months, I've seen that little dream behind you. That's your, that must, I'm assuming that's your childhood room. Is that true?
Yeah, it's my room. It's just my mom's working in her office. My dad's like,
Right, no, totally. I get it. It's just funny. I expect to see like little dolls on the like bureau there or something, little stuffed animals or something.
no dolls or stuffed animals.
Hey, Cindy.
I got my stuffed animal. This is like so stress relieving. Squish this guy.
Yeah.
I gotta
Hey,
have.
hi. Sorry, I'm here now.
Hey, it's good that you're here now.
John, Ashwarya is interested in doing research or thinking about doing research
Oh,
with us this
great.
coming semester, so I invited her to join us as well.
Wonderful. Hi, Ashwarya. How are you? You're muted.
Hello, hi. I'm
Ashwarya,
sorry.
are you actually on campus right now?
I am, yes. I'm in North Langston, yes.
Cool. You've got that tapestry behind you, which could be anywhere in the world. You don't have like the quintessential dorm like furnishings. You know?
Right. Okay. Right.
Oh, Rowan, can you do invites? Could you quickly invite Ashwarya to
Sure.
the
Notion page?
yes, that's what I'm looking for.
So who else are we waiting on? It was at least one more person, right?
Right. We
Eric?
don't have Eric. Yes, Eric. Is Jonathan, is it you or Eric who's on the West Coast? One of you is on the West Coast.
I'm on the West Coast, but I think Eric is also on the West Coast. I'm not
Okay,
sure though.
right.
So you're up early.
It's 8.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, could be worse. It's not 5 in the morning, right?
Yeah. No.
I like your bicycle shirt, Cindy. Where's that from?
Oh yeah, it says
Psych-
psychologist.
oh, that's good. That's not
Cute,
a,
huh?
that's very good. I want one of those. All right. Well, Rumi presumably intends to be here on a regular basis too, but I believe he's been sort of traveling and stuff, so I don't want to be waiting for Rumi. He's been very slow to respond on email in the last week, so I think he's on the move someplace. He's not. I don't think he's not teaching this semester. Is that right, Cindy? Right.
He has a
So,
TA set up, so maybe he is.
what did you say?
He has a TA set up, I believe. So
I don't think
But I
he's
think it's a RA probably and not a TA.
okay.
Yeah. Well, welcome everyone. We should do some introductions. I don't think we should wait for Eric because we actually, normally this meeting, we actually budget more than an hour. And so I think we're actually going to have to up our efficiency for this. So I realize, well, let's start by doing some introductions before we do anything else. That's probably the way to go. And Cindy, are you actually there someplace? Can you hear us? You're muted, so I wouldn't know if you could. Yes.
Yes, I am here. I am listening. I'm just,
That's fine. Multitasking.
yeah.
Yeah. So
You want me to go first?
sure, you can go first.
Okay, so I'm Cindy France. I teach in the psychology department. I also am associated with environmental studies. And so I'm a social and environmental psychologist. So pretty much all of my research focuses on understanding human psychological relationships to the natural world and how to promote sustainable behavior. And that's my kettle. 1 minute.
I thought kettle was a metaphor there.
And John and I have been doing research together for probably close to 15 years at this point. It's been a long time.
We've been doing research together longer than the average marriage lasts in the United States. Just thought I'd throw that up here.
Anyway, I'll stop there, and I will pass the baton to Rowan.
All right. Hi, y'all. I am Rowan Hannon. Some of y'all know me already, but I am the project manager for the environmental dashboard. So I kind of do the day-to-day taking care of environmental dashboard things and coordinate some of the research with students versus town community members and our partners in Cleveland and Oberlin. So yeah, that's me. I'm a staff.
And why don't we do pronouns? Do you have a preferred one?
Oh yeah, they, them, there, and I will put it on my little Zoom name.
Yeah, good idea, John. I am she, hers.
Okay, and I tag Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I use he, him. I am a physics major, but I'm also very interested in the environmental aspect of sciences. So here I am. Yeah.
You got to tag someone, Jonathan.
Oh, sure, Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I use she, her. I'm an EMBS major, and I have sort of worked with John and Ron before, and for the environmental dashboard, and super excited to work in coordinates with other professors and also the environmental dashboard. And I'll pass it to Alita.
I'm Alita. I'm a psychology and environmental studies major, and I was actually working in this lab before, so I'm just continuing my work. And I'll pass it on to Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a psych major, and I've also been working with Cindy and John and Rowan. So I'm just continuing mental modeler and systems thinking. I pass it to Ashwara. Yeah, sorry. Also, I use she, hers.
Hi, I'm Aishwarya. She or hers. People don't usually get my name easily, so that's totally okay. I am a psychology and a neuroscience double major. I'm a second year. I'm also Professor Franz Advice. I am very interested. I'm also interested in the environment. I work for the greenhouse gas inventory on campus. If it weren't for psychology and neuro, and I wasn't an overcommitter, I would also be an environmental studies triple major. But that's not something that I'm doing. I'll be going for the Oberlin in London program next fall, and I'm excited to attend this meeting and learn more about the the cohesion of psychology and environmental studies in this.
Well, nice.
And just a note, I'm sorry, just real quick. Ishwarya has a class later, so she's only going to be here for the very beginning of our meeting, and then she has to go.
Yeah, no, I'm
Right?
sorry, Professor Franz. Yes, no, that was the plan until we spoke the other day, but now we've been split into groups, so I do not have to attend the class today.
Oh,
so I do have time. till the end of the meeting. So thank you.
Great. Okay.
So I'll go ahead and say a word myself. John Peterson, he, him, his. I've been teaching in the environmental studies program since 2000. I was an Oberlin student long ago as well, so I have that connection as well, a biology major. Natural scientist by training, specifically systems ecologist. That's the branch of ecology that focuses on flows of energy, cycles of matter, and control mechanisms operating in complex systems. And as Cindy mentioned, we've been collaborating for some years, really on the intersection between how can we leverage the tools of social psychology to try to specifically motivate behavior changes with respect to people's consumption of resources that create greenhouse gases, et cetera. But I've become very, very interested in general in developing new communication technologies, and that's what Environmental Dashboard is, that engage, educate, and motivate people to conserve resources and generally to exhibit pro-environmental and pro-social behavior. So it's really become much broader in terms of thinking about the constellation of changes that need to take place for someone to be transformed and help transform their communities. And that's where the whole systems thinking comes in, and the relationship between systems thinking and dashboard. The technology is designed to promote that, but within this research group, we also do studies that focus more explicitly on systems thinking. Just to say really quickly, systems thinking in a most general sense is thinking that focuses on relationships and interdependencies and sees relationships between parts and wholes. Someone who's a systems thinker sees themselves as an integrated part of a larger whole. And a lot of the work that Cindy and I have been, well, there's sort of two sides of it that will become evident, I think, as we go through the projects that, obviously those of you who are already engaged know quite well. One is, what constellation of manipulations can you engage in? Those manipulations might be experiences, they might be exposure to certain technologies. What constellation of experiences causes people to increase in their systems thinking skills? And then the flip side of that is, how can we develop better tools for quantifying people's systems thinking skills? So we've been spending quite a bit of time on sort of both of those things. How do we affect it and how do we measure it? And that's a real summary of kind of the opportunities that are kind of before us this semester, is a whole suite of ongoing projects, which I'm hoping that today we can pretty quickly go through, both to provide some information for the new folks and also to kind of just provide updates for those of you who are already actively working on this about where we are right now and what needs to be done. I think you guys are relatively sewn up. Honestly, I'm not totally sure what you're doing in these workshops that they're running. I mean, I know there's a bunch of topical stuff, but I think that's sewing up at least quite a bit of your time, and that the thought is that you'll really do a lot more kind of work, really engagement in the research further on. But we're happy to have you start working on stuff whenever you're ready. So if you're chomping at the bit to start doing something. For those of you who are new to the project, you probably just want to listen carefully, ask questions to try to figure out what's going on and what you're interested in, where your skills might be useful to us. In most of our work, statistics is useful. Alita and Julia have already been really developing their statistical skills. I don't really know where you are in that, Ashwarya, and I definitely don't know where you are, Jonathan. And Olivia, my guess is that's not something you're really skilled at because I'm your advisor and know what courses you've taken.
But just if I could just jump in really quick, so this is an interdisciplinary research lab, and so we constantly have people that have lots of different backgrounds. Yes. And so we don't need everybody to have statistical skills. We just need some of the team to have statistical skills. And so those of you that don't, you have other things to bring to the table. So I'll also mention that, so John and I, I'm liking this married couple analogy. So, every discipline has their own language, their own way of talking. And it can actually be hard to talk across disciplines, so John, you will see at some point, John and I will have an argument about, like, for example, the word empathy. And so John thinks it means one thing, and the field of psychology defines it differently than John thinks it is. And, so it actually, learning to talk across those kinds of differences is a really, really valuable skill, and it takes effort. It's easier to just hang out with people who think exactly the way you do and use words exactly the way you do, but then you don't learn as much. And for the kinds of problems that we're trying to solve, we can't solve them from just one disciplinary perspective. We just can't. So I think my hope is that you'll get a lot of really valuable experiences, and one of them is the fact that we all come from different backgrounds and have different strengths.
Well said. I'll just say as an aside, it occurred to me the other day that the selection in my mind is fundamentally shaping up to be about empathy versus narcissism.
Yeah.
Anyway, two key psychological properties. All right. I'm going to share my screen now, so hopefully you're looking at this now. So those of you, we've been experimenting with various different project management tools, and I think Rowan has identified this incredibly powerful management tool called Notion, which I increasingly have the sense that, man, it can really transform your life, although I don't know how it can do that. But we have been shifting to managing our sort of notes on where projects are within this. And for those of you who are just joining the team or rejoining the team since we added Notion, you've been shared on this. And I encourage you to sort of, I should mention, for those of you who just got an invite, make sure that when you create a Notion account, you do it through your oberlin.edu account, and you identify that you're part of an educational institution, because it will give you a more powerful free account than if you're not part of an educational institution. So it's important that you sign up as there's a little box someplace when you register for it that allows you to say you're part of an educational institution, and your email will recognize that. The edu address, I think, will be recognized to allow you to do that. So anyway, this is sort of a hierarchical organization of our projects in Notion. So we're not going to go through like how to use Notion right now, but one of its many project management features, and this is probably one of the smaller ones, but it's the one that's most appealing to me, is this sort of hierarchical organization of different things that you're working on. And so what we're going to do today is kind of roll down through these projects. And I want to try to be pretty quick because we really are pretty limited in time. And so what I'm going to try to have us do is what we normally do in a research group meeting is roll through this and just sort of do updates on where are we on different things, what needs to be done. And as I say, today we'll try to put a little bit of extra effort to provide a little bit of context for our new members. And I would say for today too that for those of you who are already part of the group, we probably do want to get some updates on where you are and where you're going. For those of you who are just entering the group, I don't think we really need any commitments today to what you're going to do. I think if you just sort of listen and get a sense of what we're doing, and then next week we begin to think about that. How does that sound to you, Cindy? Because I think these guys are kind of sewn up in terms of like what they're supposed to be focusing on in this orientation thing.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you can see things are arranged in these big groups here. I'm clicking on IRB, which gives me sort of an outline of what's going on. And generally, we have things sort of listed with action items and progress. And so the IRB stands for Institutional Review Board, and I'll probably try to summarize this really quickly. When you do any research involving human subjects, you need to go through a process whereby you submit your research protocol to a committee called the Institutional Review Board Committee. Any institution like a college, university, or any other kind of research entity has an institutional review board. The purpose is to sort of make sure that people within the institution are following appropriate ethical guidelines and such protocols for how research is being conducted. And so before you can conduct research on human subjects, and there's an analogous committee for animal research, but we don't do animal research, so that's not what we deal with. We have to submit an IRB proposal. If you modify your research significantly, you can submit an amendment to it, to the research protocol. Some research is exempt, certain categories of research. If, for instance, you're doing research that's evaluating the impact of classes, that's in the exempt category. Program evaluations of various kinds are exempt. Whenever you have children involved in studies, there's sort of like an extra level of caution that people tend to want to exercise just because they're concerned about, you know, the potential exploitation, manipulation of children in ways that might, you know, not be a good thing. So, you know, there are different bars for different kinds of research. But you know, we need to think. You have to plan ahead of time because it takes a while for that committee. They have certain dates that they review new proposals, and you got to do some planning ahead of time. The only thing that's really sitting on the plate right now is an IRB amendment to a IRB proposal that we have in for research we're doing at the Great Lakes Science Center and the Watershed Stewardship Center. And that's kind of on my plate, and I'll commit right here and now to try to get something done this week. And Alita's been kind of working on this project a bit, so I'll share it with you, Alita, once I'm done with it if you want to take a look at the amendment. But the amendment is to allow us to use video cameras to study our new exhibit in Metro Parks. Olivia was actually involved in some of this research, and Olivia, I'm hoping you might be interested in returning to this because you've got some skills on it, and it'd be cool if we could do that. Also, we've been engaged in evaluating the impact of some of the content from our Great Lakes Science Center exhibit on both knowledge acquisition and attitudes and other psychological parameters of things on kids there. We constructed that as a collaboration in which the Great Lakes Science Center is officially doing the evaluation and officially doing the assessment, and we are evaluating the assessment. And that, I mean, we're already kind of evaluating the impact. I think Alita's probably done some work on that since we last talked that she can update us on eventually. But we can't officially evaluate that. Certainly couldn't publish anything or anything like that until we have approval for that. But I think that's the only thing on the plate. Cindy, do we have other things that you can think of that we need to prep for in terms of IRB proposals?
No, I don't think so. Alita, did we submit the IRB for you? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure we got IRB approval for your project, right? Or no? Maybe we didn't. You know what? We might need to still
Which project is that?
Well, the known sample study is what we called it. It's more.
I think we got approval.
Okay. I mean, we've changed it, so probably we want to just file an amendment just to acknowledge that we've changed things. But yeah, otherwise, I think we're good to go.
Nice thing about amendments is they only go to the chair of the. Oh, why won't it spontaneously do the toggle on that? I'm very frustrated by that, Rowan, that it seems to like not. Yeah, some things about this technology just don't work for me yet. But there you go. All right, so it sounds like we do have something else to do on that front. Moving on to research projects, when I click on this button, you're going to see this whole list of research projects. These are various projects that are in various stages, various research projects that are in various stages, and actually some of these have several projects underneath them, but they're sort of categorized by place or how they fit into our overall schema. And we're just going to roll quickly through these. So we have this, as kind of I've intimated already, we have this exhibit. Oberlin College Environmental Dashboard team is hosting an exhibit at the Great Lakes Science Center and a new exhibit at the Cleveland Metro Parks Watershed Stewardship Center. And we've really got two separate things going on there. One is a digital signage assessment where we're assessing how the impact. Oh no, this first one is this first one is the video one. So this is one where we're assessing engagement with how people are engaging with the exhibit, and we're doing that largely with video, but also by tracking that exhibit has a touch screen. I'm realizing at some point, at least for Eric and Jonathan, we probably need to do a kind of like overview of the project so that you know what the heck we're doing. But it's an exhibit that has a touch screen, and we can track both how people are interacting with the exhibit through video assessment, and we've developed a pretty sophisticated protocol with Olivia and with Dina Sadi, who was working with us for some time, for how we assess, how we quantify an encounter. When people walk by the sign and walk by the exhibit and interact with the exhibit, quantifying what they're doing in various ways. Alita actually worked on version 1 of that, and then Olivia and Dina helped us refine that considerably in the way we quantify that. So one thing we need to do is identify kind of a student team to work on that, and at least one of the people working on it at least one of our stats people, I hope, can participate in this. And then there's work in kind of like quantifying these interactions. Probably what sits in front of us right now as sort of like the first order of business is to do a new post-COVID baseline assessment in the Great Lakes Science Center. There's less people in the Great Lakes Science Center right now because of COVID, I think, and probably the way they're interacting is different. So we probably need to do a baseline before we re-engage in manipulation. So like any experimental system, you got to kind of know what are people doing now, and then if you want to assess the impact of something, you need to measure how are things before the manipulation and how do things change as a result of the manipulation. So there are two potential manipulations in front of us. We've created a sign designed to sort of be attached to the touch screen that we hope is going to increase interactivity with the touch screen. That has not yet been added, so we want to do baseline work before we add that. And then the other manipulation that's sort of in the pipeline is we developed a controller that, so instead of using this iPad on a, installed in a metal case and on a stand there, which is what we initially put in there as a controller, we developed over the summer new software that will allow you to do that with your phone, so that you can scan a barcode or put a short URL in there, and then you'll have what amounts to the controller on your phone. Obviously with COVID, we were thinking that might encourage people to interact when they might be scared to be touching a screen that's a public touch screen for people, so that you can kind of do it that way. So that, I think, is going to be a really interesting thing to do. I guess I should mention there's a potential to extend that to Oberlin too, because we're planning on introducing that probably this semester in Oberlin, that touchscreen, so people walking by any screen in the city, the 21 screens we have installed in the city, could touch the touch screen, could use their phone and just tracking their use. That wouldn't be video assessment, that would be assessment of data we capture whenever someone touches a button. So we could see what are they looking at. So actually, I hadn't thought about that until this moment, but that actually is a pretty cool new thing we could do. And I wonder if I can squeeze that into the IRB for the stuff in Cleveland. Cindy, what do you think? Is that something totally different, or what do you think? This is just sort of tracking people using a phone app. What's your take on that?
You would put it into the IRB that we already got to analyze the video data?
Yeah, it's similar in the sense that it's people interacting
Yeah.
with the dashboard, and it's so innocuous in
Yeah.
its own way that I just feel like,
Yeah. I
even
think you
though it
could
is
add
a
it.
different context, I think you can spin it as being the same
Yeah.
part of the same study.
Yeah, I think you can. And
And
if I think you should try. And if
Yeah,
and if
okay.
Daphne doesn't go for it, then she'll let you know.
Because we did extend, you remember we submitted an IRB to do work in the Oberlin Public Schools, so it's already been extended into the city of Oberlin. It's just like
Yeah.
a new angle on it, really.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like really less, it's less invasive, I think, than many other things, you know.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
So it's hard to say it's nothing but innocuous. Okay. So at any rate, any questions on this one before we go on? Again, I don't think we need to, I don't know that we need to get anything done before next week on this. So I don't, you know, other than the IRB thing. Anyone have any questions on what we're doing here? Especially Jonathan or Ashwari. Did I get that right?
Ashwarya.
Ashwarya. Yeah.
Nope. Keep practicing.
Yeah, right. We'll get there. Okay, so I am moving on to assessment of learning. So, Alita, do you want to try to give a two-sentence summary of this manipulation / experiment we're engaged in here?
Okay, so basically I actually don't know exactly how we got the data, so no, I can't do that.
Okay. The exhibit at the Great Lakes Science Center consists of a series of different stories, and people engaging with that exhibit can press the touch screen to look at these different stories. And most of the people in the Great Lakes Science Center, most of the audience for this is kids, to be honest, probably between 3rd grade and 6th grade, let's say. We're interested in understanding what they would learn from the stories that we've created. You know, we're trying to teach them about climate change, air quality, water quality, resource conservation. So we've got this series of different stories that end up being buttons you can press on the screen. They combine real-time data with just sort of kind of a story-based thing with our character narrators, Flash and Wally. Here's a little sticker with Flash on it. You guys probably recognize that squirrel. Essentially, we took 2 of those stories, the one on lake and the one on climate change, and asked educators there to have students review all of the content within those and fill out surveys before and after they reviewed that content. And the surveys were explicitly designed to assess both knowledge retention, so the facts within them about, like, you know, things affecting water quality and in the Great Lakes, or things that lead to climate change, ways in which activities in Cleveland affect climate change, impacts of climate change on Cleveland, that sort of thing. But we wanted to assess both factual retention of information in the presentation and you know, psychological, behavioral things, how much they care about it, whether they're inclined to take action, etc. So basically, we have that data. Alita, where are you on that data analysis?
So I've run basically preliminary analyses on it. I've like merged the data and stuff and done some ANOVAs. So I can give a quick summary of what I found.
If you can give a quick summary, that would be great.
Okay.
Let me just get ready for this. There's, like I say, I'm still. Oh my goodness, that is just so crazy what this is doing. Really. Why did it just give me these check boxes? That's craziness. I didn't ask it to do that. All right, never mind. I'm all ears.
You're ready? Okay.
Yes.
So basically for the factual and what we're calling the conceptual questions, there was a main effect of time, no interaction effect, so people scored higher at time 2. And then the other things that was significant.
Hey, Alita, I'm sorry, sorry to interrupt, but they scored higher. Oh, they only got the questions that were relevant to the show they watched, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Carry on.
Yeah, so the other effects that I found.
Wait, I'm sorry, is that an across the board effect, or is that specific to psychological or factual?
Those were the factual ones, and then the like conceptual applied ones.
So both right, so factual and applied. Okay, great, that's very cool.
Yeah, and those were pretty strong effects too. There wasn't much else. I didn't notice much difference on the psychological questions. So for the behavioral questions that had to do with water quality, there was a main effect of time, in that people were scoring lower, but I need to look into whether lower is like thinking about it more or thinking about it less. Because that's important.
You said there's a main effect for water variables,
Water quality.
but not necessarily conservation.
Yeah, not for conservation and not for energy conservation either.
A main effect of time, basically, you're saying that they increased over time?
Yeah,
She
I'm
said
not
they
sure whether
decreased over time.
Decreased,
but
sorry.
we need to figure out what that Lita says she needs to figure out what that means.
Okay.
and then for the thought and attitude psychological questions, there was a main effect of time for the energy ones and for the efficacy ones, actually.
That's
in the right
energy.
Direction? Like it went up?
Oh, I might have that wrong. Let me double check. I might have copied and pasted something wrong.
Well, what I'm gleaning from this is, hey, we got results. We got real effects. And it also sounds, Alita, like you need to dig your head into it a little bit and figure out exactly what these main effects are, directionally and that sort of thing. And so maybe the thing to do is, to write up sort of like a bulleted summary of findings. And I believe that yeah, we have in the workflow a kind of this summary of like of the kind of key questions. Is there change before and after? That's the main effect of time we're looking at. Is the change different for the two different presentations? Are there spillover effects? So I think your analytical charge that the group assigned to you is pretty clear, and it sounds like you have done the analyses necessary to answer most of those questions, but it sounds like we probably need like a summary, and whether you do that for next week or the week after, again, I don't know quite how much they're putting on your plate right now, so I don't know what is like reasonable to expect, and you do. What's reasonable to expect?
I have some other things that I need to work on for the systems thinking assessments.
Okay.
I'll probably do that first.
Okay. So what's the date of the 2 meetings from now? Can anyone look at a calendar quickly? That is
The 18th?
That's the 18th.
Yeah, the 18th.
Okay. So does that seem reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if that, that slides for whatever reason, whatever, but at least then we've got like a stake in the ground in terms of, what, and as I say, I think that would be basically organized around sort of these questions and, sort of short bulleted summary of what the findings are. But I'm really excited that it sounds like we got something on those. And I guess I would say for the group as a whole, I think there is a time sensitivity to this experiment in the sense that, obviously our partners at the Great Lakes Science Center are going to be quite interested in our findings. And depending on what we find, I think they're quite open to continuing our work. And I'll just say this about Great Lakes Science Center. Um, most of the schools in and around Cleveland are not physically open this fall. And the Great Lakes Science Center has developed a program where parents can basically pay to drop their kids off for the day, and their kids work at the Great Lakes Science Center on their schoolwork, so it provides an environment where they can work on their schoolwork, but then they provide a bunch of enriching activities in addition to that. And I think they would be open to us continuing our work if we had follow-up to do. So I think this is an example of a situation where it behooves us to not take too long in turning things around, because whatever we find as results might lead us to want to do a follow-up study. And I think we have a window for doing that as long as COVID is here, and that window might not last that long. So we should take advantage of that window. Yeah, that's what I would say on that one. Any questions or comments on this before we move on? All right, maybe I will say one thing, because I don't think it falls under anything else here. No, it doesn't. There may be sort of a variation of this. So one of the things that Rowan and I have been talking about in the environmental communication class that we're leading this semester is developing an exercise for kids in this program at Great Lakes Science Center, in which we would sort of walk them through analyzing data on electricity and water production, consumption, greenhouse gas emissions in the building using Building OS. So it's a little different from these stories, but it would make a lot of sense to do an assessment around that as well. It fits very well with this current study. And so that could be sort of an extension of this. Point is, I think there will be potentially quite a bit of interesting research to do on the impact of the technology on kids and their thinking and behavior and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of, I guess that would probably be an amendment to this as well. Yeah, it fits very closely within there. I should remember to put that in the IRB. But so I think there's really cool stuff we can do on the impact of this technology on kids, building on what Alita has been doing. So if anyone's interested in that, good to think about it. All right, let's talk about the shower length study. And
we don't have any updates yet.
Okay, well, Cindy, do you want to just provide a 2-sentence description
Sure.
of what the heck this is?
Sure. So we're really interested in influencing people's behavior, and encouraging students to take shorter showers is one of the more impactful behaviors that students can do. But how do you measure people's shower length without being a stalker? So we have been developing this method where we attach a temperature sensor to the pipe where that comes out of the wall, where the water comes out. And when somebody turns on the shower, there's this temperature spike, and then it drops off. And so we've been developing an algorithm to figure out how to translate that temperature change data into an estimate of shower length. And so to do that, we had a bunch of people time their showers for us. So we have the temperature data, we have their timing data, and then we were using machine learning to try to develop the best algorithm for translating the temperature data into estimates of shower length. And then once we have that, we did actually do a study in the dormitories where we had sensors installed on all the showers. And then partway through the semester, we put posters up in some of the showers. And then, our rough analysis suggested that the shower length went down after the posters went up. So the posters were obviously encouraging shorter showers. So once we developed the algorithm, it's a really great opportunity to do some cool experiments. Just looking at different messages. How do different messages impact, or different kinds of messages or images or whatever, impact people's behavior? So that's the project. We hit a bump because the person who was doing the machine learning stuff had some life difficulties, and I have not circled back with that person. So that's on me. I need to do it. I will add it to my to-do list.
Right. I guess if we had anyone here, and I sense we probably don't, who's an expert in machine learning algorithms, that would be a potential project. But let's not worry about that right now. Okay, systems thinking assessment. So this particular topic, you'll see, actually has lots of different studies underneath it. And I think I will skip straight to the GMO mental modeler particular study. And okay, I'll go ahead and provide a quick summary of this. We have a colleague named Stephen Gray, University of Michigan, right? Am I right? Am I losing it here, Cindy?
Yeah, that's right.
Who has developed a piece of software called Mental Modeler, an online piece of software which allows people to develop causal loop diagrams, he's been using that to as sort of like a way of essentially building systems thinking skills. And so we have, within our research group, been collaborating with him, thinking about two aspects of using Mental Modeler. One is Mental Modeler as an independent variable. And you'll hear Cindy and I talking a lot about independent and dependent variables. And it's really important that you understand the difference between those two. An independent variable is a cause, it's a manipulation. So when you talk about something as an independent variable, you're talking about your manipulation. What are you doing? What do you want to assess? What are you assessing the impact of? It is the thing that is impacting, whereas a dependent variable is the thing you measure to assess that change. So a lot of the surveys we're using, those are full of questions that are dependent variables. They're designed to, we're trying to measure change, and they're what we're using to measure change. Have people's attitudes changed? Have their behaviors changed? Has their knowledge changed? So that's all about dependent variables. All the metrics we're using to try to assess systems thinking, that's all about dependent variables. Well, Mental Modeler, we're kind of thinking about potentially as being both an independent and a dependent variable. So do people, the two questions would then be, does the process of using Mental Modeler change your systems thinking capacity? So that's Mental Modeler as an independent variable. And then the flip side of that is, can we use people's ability to construct the quality of people's mental modelers and as an assessment of their systems thinking skills? So if you were higher in systems thinking, do you construct different kinds of models, and can we quantify those different kinds of models? All right, so that's all context for actually a couple different studies that we're working on involving Mental Modeler. In this particular case, this is an experiment, kind of a found experiment, in the sense that, and by the way, a found experiment is a manipulation that is already taking place that you're just kind of taking advantage of, that suits your purposes in terms of measuring something you want to measure. Kind of a found experiment in the sense that Stephen and I are both doing case studies in our classes, very different classes, but both sort of introductions to environmental studies at some level. We're both doing case studies involving genetically modified crops and people's perceptions of genetically modified crops. My particular case study asks that students empathize with several different positions on GMOs. So occupy, think about the world from several different perspectives on GMOs. His kind of does the same, but he has people sort of like building mental models building models out of that. So, you know, different classes, slightly different variables. Anyway, we've been assessing those. I guess the main update on this one is that.
Well, I have updates.
Okay. Well, we have a couple updates. So.
I mean, I haven't quite finished doing the analysis, but I've done a lot of it. And basically, what I found is that doing mental modeler had no impact on any of our systems thinking metrics, but it did have some impact on things like how people feel about the absolutism of their beliefs in GMO. You know, is GMO okay, and attitude changes towards GMO. And I guess I'll summarize it in 3 ways. First of all, everybody seemed to get less polarized, but especially the people that were against GMOs. And just for some context for you guys, the students are Michigan State students. Most of them are in favor of GMO. So they're different from the Oberlin community in that way. So the people who were against GMOs seems to get less extreme. And that seemed to be stronger for people who did the version of the task. You know, either they represented their own mental model, or they represented the mental model of someone who had the opposite position as them. And so there does seem to be an effect of representing the perspective of somebody that holds the opposite opinion. But the last thing I'll observe is that all of these effects were pretty small and weak. And so I think what we need to do is, since he's doing the class again, we need to add more data. And you know, I think we just need a bigger sample size for the effects to really be robust. But the take-home message is it's promising. You know, it does look like this exercise has an impact on how people are thinking, that people are thinking in a more nuanced way about it. And it looks like there's a particular effect of doing a mental model that's not your own. You know, doing a mental model of your opponent might have a particularly powerful impact.
No one's tried to analyze data on my class, which is a smaller class, but yes.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, yes. So, and then the other thing is that the T1 survey was revised and deployed in John's class. So that has happened. I haven't actually checked to see how many people actually.
I'll do that while we're on this call.
But yeah, hopefully they did. Yeah, because at this point it's probably too late, because I've completely contaminated them with a whole class on systems thinking. So they're no good anymore for T1. They're done. But I put in some plugs. So all right, and yes, let's just move on, because we're running down on time pretty quickly here. We have been doing for some time, you know, sort of assessments of systems thinking at the beginning and end of various classes in Oberlin. And I've kind of lost track of exactly where we are on this. I know that in a general sense, one of the sort of challenges and frustrations that Cindy and I have been sort of dealing with in our research is it's hard to measure changes in systems thinking. We haven't seen a whole lot of change as a result of classes. And there are some fundamental challenges in what we're trying to do. You do a systems thinking assessment at the start of a class and an end of a class. And obviously, students have many things going on in their lives that are not just that particular class that you're measuring it in, and everything else in their life is affecting them as well. So it's not a very clean experiential measure. You've got lots of contamination from other uncontrolled variables in their lives. And so, might not be surprising that it's hard to measure changes when you're looking, in a particular course. For some courses, like my course in systems modeling, you would expect certain things like, minimally what we call formal systems thinking to change, because that course is all about formal systems thinking. But a little harder to do in a lot of the other classes that we teach, even if they do place some emphasis on systems thinking. So I don't even know where we are on that. We have Alita on here. So Alita, where the heck are we on this?
Yeah, this is on me. I analyzed the data probably at least a month and a half ago. I did like preliminary analysis, and you've been waiting on me to make a summary of that analysis to share with you all, and I just still haven't done that.
All right, so let's just punt on this one. I will say that in addition to classes, we have been looking for particular, what we think are really seminal experiences that are likely to impact systems thinking. And one of those was the Sea Education Association. This is this experience where students go out on these boats for a prolonged period of time. And it's the whole experience is very, very much about sort of team building and sort of thinking of the boat as a system and that sort of thing. So we're expecting that to have a big impact, but I think they're basically shut down because of COVID right now. So I think we have a very small, I think we have one class, and they're pretty small classes. I think we have maybe 20 people or something in the sample. So hard to see statistical effects when you've got such a small pool, and we're hoping to build that up over time. But I haven't even circled back to them to figure out what they're doing right now. I will do that eventually, but let's punt on that one and switch to our other mental modeler study, which Julia has been the sort of lead student researcher on. And Julia, do you want to provide a kind of quick summary of the goals of this study, the goals and methods of this study?
Yeah, so we've been running a few different studies with Mental Modeler, and we first created an instruction video to teach people how to use Mental Modeler, and then we showed people Mental Modeler, like the instruction video, and basically we're seeing if watching the video and using Mental Modeler like changes people's systems thinking. And we're using like ripple questions, and basically we've just been doing a bunch of studies, and we used Psych 100 participants to see if the time 1 and time 2 data correlated with our mental modeler analysis. And then we also used MTurk participants to see if different videos changed systems thinking with also with Mental Modeler, and if the Mental Modeler, we created these metrics for Mental Modeler as we were having participants create a scenario in Mental Modeler, and we're seeing if those were different based on systems thinking and ripple questions. And then now we're seeing if using Mental Modeler first changes people's systems thinking and ripple questions. So there are a lot of studies just.
Yeah.
Let me jump in with just a couple of translation points for our new members. No, that's fine. There's just a lot to explain. So MTurk stands for Mechanical Turk, and it's an online workforce platform. So basically we collect a lot of our data there. People all over the country get paid, $1, $2 or whatever to do our studies. So that's what that means. And Julia referred to ripple questions. At some point, we'll have you guys read the paper that describes that, but they're measures that try to, if you can imagine a stone dropping into a pond and then it sends ripples out, right? So if people think about the cause, like okay, I do something, there's a car accident, how many people does it affect? And so we call those ripple measures, like how far out do you see the consequences of an action? So just wanted to provide those two quick little bits of background. And let me just say one other thing. Julia, we talked to Stephen recently, and he has a new way of, we need to send him the mental modeler files that got downloaded from the software. So if you could put them all in a, they need to be named with participant number or something. The file names will need to be named, but we want to get them all in a folder so that we can share that with Stephen.
Yeah, he has a way of you know, coming up with some summary statistics that he thinks are useful, that we don't yet understand, that, you know, we should just add to our analysis.
Okay, so some people like didn't upload like a complete file and just did a screenshot, but that wouldn't help, right?
No, someone would have to rebuild it, I imagine, because I imagine he's just pulling it from the file. We should maybe make more of a fuss of that about that moving forward, that we need the file.
Okay.
We certainly could, you know, probably rebuild those pretty easily because they're just, you know, they're just pictures, but
yeah, they would be easy to rebuild.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about because like just the correlations between the variables. I feel like that's what we wanted Stephen to do, and I wasn't sure, like we would not completely know how to create the correlations exactly.
I don't quite understand what you're saying.
It's like because you have to do like how positive or how negative.
Right, and that's, you're saying you don't see that in the picture?
I mean, you see it, but it's not like
It's not a number.
Yeah.
Well, we could probably fake it though, right? I mean, it's, yeah, okay. Yeah, you were saying we wouldn't be quite fully reproducing what they have, but yeah, right, gotcha. We did not make much of a fuss about that in our description, so my guess is that that's not one of the strongest things we got going in this, because I recall that our script is like, if you don't know, just, you know, do whatever. Yeah, we certainly didn't make a big deal about the strength, I don't think, but yeah, I imagine that is one of the things that he would be analyzing. Right. Anything about where that stands right now and sort of like, you know, kind of action items on that particular one?
Yeah. So for like the creating a correct version of the model for, is assessing for the correctness, I like made this is what I think would be correct. I like made 2 versions of it, and I made a rubric and like in a document which I shared with you. And
I think that hit me at a time when I was like with lots of emails and I probably didn't do squat. I think it's probably back there. Yeah, I think I probably ignored that. Resend that email to me, so I gotta do something. Okay, got that. Sounds good. Okay, so that's probably fine for next week. Is everyone okay with us going a little bit over? We're already over. And like I say, usually we budget more than an hour for this, so looks like people are
I have to take off in just a couple of minutes.
Okay,
I have
well,
I have to be someplace at 12:15.
let's quickly at least describe some of these other ones. And since Rumi's not here, I guess we don't need to worry about sustainable literacy stuff. Let's just at least briefly give people a heads up about these other studies. So the sledgehammer study.
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Okay, good.
So basically, we've been trying to increase systems thinking, and we've had mixed success. Some studies have worked, but a lot of studies haven't. And so what we decided to do was to take a step back and run a study where the manipulation, the independent variable, was as strong as we could make it. So like a sledgehammer. We basically wanted to hit people over the head with a sledgehammer. And basically in one version of this study, we said, here's what systems thinking is. Please do this while you answer the questions. And so the plan was to look at which of our measures were responsive to that. We wanted to fix, because some of our measures seem like they're not working. So we've run a couple of studies like that, and basically found that sledgehammers did not change people's answers to our questions, like very, very little. So that's kind of sobering, and it's making us rethink our approach. So it's possible that increasing systems thinking just with some short little thing like watching a 5-minute video, maybe it just doesn't work. So I don't know that we've completely decided to abandon that approach, but that was the purpose of the studies, and the results were pretty discouraging. So I will stop there.
Yeah. What's the situation with Molly? Is she just totally out of the loop this semester?
Yeah.
Okay.
She will not be joining us.
So if we did want to continue this, we would need to find someone else to do it. And, we don't really know what to do next, I think, is part of our situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, we won't say more about that right now, but we will circle back to it. All right. So let's talk about the known sample assessment study and maybe provide a brief summary of that. Yes. Who wants to do this? And I think both Cindy and I do have stuff to report on this as well.
Mostly you.
Right. So I'll provide a brief summary of this one. The idea here is that we're trying to assess our measures of systems thinking. Not the sledgehammer is like, can you whack people over the head and get them to change in their systems thinking and measure those changes. This is more about, can we take people who we're pretty sure should have difference in systems thinking based on their professions and their training or their propensities, and do we in fact see those differences that we would expect? And so we have explored a range of different possible samples that we might expect to have differences. And initially, we were kind of focused on various different academicians and how they might differ in systems thinking, and that seemed to be kind of more complicated to figure out. And we settled on what I thought was a cool idea, and it seemed like other people thought it was a cool idea, which is physicians who all have, a pretty high level of training and similar levels of training in some way, but different groups of physicians have very different focuses professionally, and one might imagine very different propensities for systems thinking, with this division mainly being between specialists who one might expect to be very reductionistic in their thinking, focused very much on this, the particular surgery they're doing and, how to make that work and stuff, versus generalists, general practitioners, GPs, family doctors, pediatricians, who tend to be very focused on the relationship to a patient, to their families, their communities, etc. One might expect that they'd have a much higher level of systems thinking. And so they seem to be from a strictly like, what you'd expect to be different, kind of a perfect in some ways sample. And we have been exploring how we might actually get that sample. And unfortunately, the feedback I've gotten from various physicians I've consulted with is it's hard to get physicians to respond to surveys. They're over-surveyed. If you do want to survey them, the surveys have to be really short to get them to do something. And ideally, those surveys are coming from someone they care about. Those are sort of what I've gleaned from consultation with a student who graduated from Oberlin a while ago, actually is an environmental studies major, but is now in completing med school. His dad, who turns out to be a sociologist who studies physicians, so he's a real interesting guy who I need to circle back to. Also from another Oberlin former student, a guy who graduated with me and became a doctor, who is a family practitioner. He and his wife are both family practitioners. They actually just dropped their daughter off to be a first year at Oberlin, and so they were visiting with me while they were out here. And he actually turns out is associated with, he may be a really good person to have involved in this because he's been very engaged in holistic healthcare and physician training. And so he's already kind of steeped in kind of the physician's equivalent of a more systems thinking approach to stuff. So anyway, made a little bit of progress in terms of making contacts and consulting with people, but still not clear what kind of venue might work in terms of this. But it is pretty clear that we could not throw the kitchen sink at these people, which is, I think, one of the things we really wanted to do with this survey was really unload all of our systems thinking questions on them so we could use this as a way of, you know, assessing differences in those. And so I don't know how that's going to affect how we think about this as a potential group to work with.
Don, I have to go, but let me just say one thing in response to that last point you made. So if we think we could get big enough numbers, we could randomly assign people to just a small subset of our kitchen sink. You know, so if we think we can get 500 people, for example, we can have people just do 1/5 of the questions. But I also think we have a lot of data right now that we can probably whittle down and just focus on a smaller number.
Right.
Unfortunately, I have to go because I'm in danger of being late.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
Nice to meet you guys, new people, and see you next time.
All right, sounds good. If you guys will stick around for just 1 second, maybe we could circle through our new people. And maybe you guys could, again, I actually really don't want you to be thinking about a commitment right now, but I wouldn't mind it if we just did a quick go around and if people just mention things that they found particularly interesting. Again, I actually don't want to think about commitments to things, but it would be nice to do a little circle and a little round robin where people, you know, our existing members too, just talk about things that you heard, that you were interested in. And you may feel like, hey, I still don't understand what the heck's going on well enough to really have a view on this, but whatever. Let's just do a quick go around and people can just say whatever's on their mind. And Aishwarya, maybe we'll start with you. You're at the bottom of my screen.
Yeah, I think from what I gathered about the summaries that you gave of the different projects, the assessment of learning and impact of speedrun dashboard stories, which Alita is working on. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. I think you mentioned a segue where assessment on being impacted by technology. I think you were talking about how we can there's like a scope for assessment of students in technology and how that's being impacted during this time. I again don't have like a very broad.
Right.
Okay. Yes, but I thought I thought that project is something that I would that I found interesting, and that segue is something that I thought I could contribute to. I also found the systems thinking GMO mental modeler project interesting. I found the sledgehammer thinking that was also cool, but again, I think because we're kind of in a place where we don't know what to do next, I am not exactly sure how that's gonna happen. So yeah, those were a couple things that stood out to me in the session. Yeah.
Great, that's great. And like I said, I'm not even taking notes because I don't wanna even go that distance in terms of commitment, but that's just really helpful to hear that. Can you just say a word, Aishwarya, about your statistical background, just so that we know that? Have you had stats?
No, so I am currently doing Psych 200, which is Research Methods 1.
Right, okay.
I've taken Math 134, but no statistics yet.
Okay, that's great. Good to know. All right, who wants to go next?
I can say something. Yeah, I also thought the GMO and the sledgehammer was pretty interesting to me, especially the GMO for me, just because sometimes that seems to be such a polarizing subject that it's interesting to see the impact of just really baseline information can do for someone. And then also the last thing we talked about with the physicians, my parents are both specialists, so I already have like a direct connection that I could potentially help out with in that category, which is also an interesting thing to me. But yeah, I kind of just like how all the projects are very connected in terms of like the overall goal and how you kind of can collaborate with everyone regardless of the project you're working on.
Great. Good.
I can go next. I found obviously the Great Lakes Science Center exhibit in the Metro Parks interesting because I do have a lot of background in specifically data analysis in terms of, having like a finalized method that Dina and I figured out for determining what we count as different interactions with the exhibit. And I'm actually kind of excited though because I didn't know about the Metro Park part of it. So different scenery, I guess. And I'm also interested in the shower studies thing that Cindy sort of talked about for a little bit. I know that when I was living in Cannes, it totally crossed my mind that I did in fact like see posters, which is very interesting. And I kind of like the component where it's sort of awareness, but sort of subconsciously when you're looking at posters and such to then influence your further actions down the line. So that's also something I was interested in. Like,
Cool. Alita, Julia, you guys want to talk about what you're excited about for the semester?
Yeah, I am still really excited about the Great Lakes Science Center, especially just anything to do with kids is exciting for me. So yeah, I'm still interested in working on that. I think I'm also really interested in the sledgehammer study and like why it's not working is really interesting to me. So maybe I would like to work on that a little bit.
Cool.
I mean, I'm excited about the mental modeler study, and it's a lot more interesting than I actually could explain it to be. It is. I mean, it's really cool once you like get the giant data set and look at what everybody's doing and analyze that based
Right.
on like all the different metrics. And I'm excited to see about like the correctness of the model and to see what we come up with for that.
Well, that's cool. You know, one of the goals of, I think, the college's goals of this winter term thing is for you guys to get to a point where you actually go through a process of sort of presenting on what you do. And, you know, we haven't placed a great emphasis on that in the research group because it's just sort of this, ongoing analysis and setup of experiments we do. But I think that might provide us with a little bit more discipline this semester in terms of trying to take something and actually get to the point where we're sort of like summarizing, drawing conclusions, and thinking about how we want to present that. So, and I imagine that's a lot of what's being talked about this week. I have no idea what you guys are doing. Have you guys already started, or does it start next week?
Starts
Starts
next
next
week.
week.
It starts next week. I imagine they're just sort of like, sort of gearing you up to think about research in general and sort of the full scope of the project. I know they've invited us in to give presentations, but I feel like those are later in the semester, which has me a little bit confused about like what they're doing the first week. But whatever, my guess is they're helping you to contextualize research, and I hope what they do with you is useful next week because I don't really know what they're doing. But cool. All right, like I say, today was just sort of the introduction to each other, the projects, get you guys thinking about it. Thought it would be really useful to do that before you go into this thing next week. So as you go into this thing next week, you can kind of like gestate what you're already working on or what you might work on. I think as maybe it was Jonathan who said it, it is really collaborative. So even if you're not working on a particular project, you'll be asked to weigh in and give feedback on it and that sort of thing, which is one of the fun things about being in a research group is like there's a lot going on and you don't need to be principally responsible for something to sort of gain from and contribute to the different studies. And if you get really excited about something, we're pretty loosey-goosey in terms of who does what. So, if you're worked up about something, that's great. It's the research actually, I mean, I think for those of you who've been involved in this and those of you who are becoming involved, it's actually really fun. It's just like a kind of problem solving and you just kind of like incrementally work at it I mean, there's a quote from Einstein that I've always really loved, which is that if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't call it research. And I think that really is an important part of research. I mean, people have this idea about it being this mysterious thing. I mean, we're just, at some level, we're muddling. And we muddle even more, we muddle a lot in research because we honest to God don't know what we're going to find or where we're going to go. Hopefully we have enough discipline in our process so that as we learn something, it's reorienting us in a way that leads us to a natural next step. But frankly, a lot of what we do just ends up in sort of dead ends, and we end up scratching our head about why we're not getting an effect we expect to get. And we just kind of then sit on it for a while until some other idea comes up. But it really is a wonderfully creative process. And, a lot of researchers out there, because as a sort of academic researcher, your whole career sort of gets into it, your ego gets involved in it. And a lot of times you go to conferences and there's sometimes a lot of arrogance in research because people are sort of like, their whole life sort of depends on these ideas. I think you'll find in our group there's a lot less arrogance in it. Partly because I think Cindy and I are really like mostly motivated by wanting to learn things that can have a positive impact on the world, as opposed to wanting to prove a particular idea is right or wrong. And so I think it sort of reorients like our motivations a little bit. And also, and this is something to think about as you consider a career in research. There are these different tiers of research levels. It doesn't have to do with the quality of research. It really has to do with context. But we talk about tier one research institutions. A tier one research institution is an institution that basically runs on research. They run on grants. They raise grant funds, and all of their work is dependent on those grants. And it does create a lot of fast-paced movement. And so for some people, it's really an ideal situation. If you really want to be on sort of the cutting edge of moving things forward, a tier one research institution is a great place to be because that's where there's a lot of excitement and attention. And but there's some real disadvantages in tier one research institutions in that your whole life is kind of dependent on raising grant funds and on the success of your publication record. Oberlin is not a tier one research institution. We get paid for teaching here. We can get extra money if we raise grant funds. And actually, here's something you probably don't know. Us faculty are on a 9-month paid contract. And it's actually advantageous to us to be on this 9-month contract. We can have them divided among all 12 months, but technically we're paid for 9 months, which means if we raise grant funds, we can pay ourselves during the 3 summer months with our grant funding. So there's a little bit of an incentive to raise grant money, but the flip side of that is we basically have, I mean, it's not like you get paid a lot as a college professor, but we have respectable salaries. We're living in Oberlin. It's cheap to live in Oberlin. And so we can support ourselves without the desperation of raising grant funds that comes from a tier one research institution. And I think it gives us a whole lot more flexibility to explore ideas that might not get traction in a tier one institution because there's just so much pressure on publication and being at the forefront. I feel like being a researcher at a small liberal arts college has allowed me to be incredibly more creative in what I do than I would have been able to do at a tier one research institution because my life is not depending on getting grant money. I don't need to be in whatever is the most exciting and popular area of research the way you kind of have to be if you're at Tier 1. And I'll just say too, as kind of an aside, I did work at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, which is sort of, I'll say, the worst of the worst in terms of Tier 1 research institutions, because all of their money, every bit of their money comes from grant research. And when you raise grant fundings, if you apply for grants and get them at WHOI, 50% of your grant funds don't go to your research. It goes to the institution, just to run the institution, to keep the lights on, to pay for the bureaucrats. And that's horrendous. So like you only get half the money you raise. At Oberlin, it's an incredibly good gig. Basically, unless we raise serious grant funds, they give it all to us. We have all of our grant money to do actual stuff on our grants. There was a while when I raised some big money, like near $1 million grants, and then they started stealing money from me. But they stole a pretty small amount of money. So it wasn't actually so bad. But like most of our grants, we get all the money. Rowan, who is to my left here, is completely paid on grant funds. Cindy and I have been among the most successful people at raising grants at Oberlin College. And we've actually had paid staff on our grants since 2008, when we got a big grant. And it does put an amount of stress on us, because if we want to keep people like Rowan working on our projects, Rowan gets paid through Oberlin College, but all of Rowan's money is coming right now from the Cleveland Foundation. I'm just giving you a little sort of like context for like what it's like to be an academic and the different contexts you can work in. There are obviously academics who work within organizations, like, sometimes within consultant groups. So some of our students, actually, one of our students who worked on the dashboard for years, who's a co-author on some papers with us, Evan Tinknell, works for basically a stats consulting firm, and he's loved that gig. We all thought he was going to go to grad school and become a prof, because he really had it in him, but he's just loved working as a statistical consultant, and he does lots and lots of really cool research on the efficacy of different, I think, energy conservation programs. So there's a whole world out there if you want to be a researcher in the private sector or working for nonprofits who do cool stuff. And you tend to get paid better in that gig. You don't advance yourself academically. You're not really in the academic world. So anyway, that's a little bit of a mind dump, but I thought I'd just give it to you, because there are some, you can become a college professor like us. That's one option. And there are some advantages to being at a small liberal arts college from research perspective. I feel like we have done research at Oberlin that no one else in the world could have or would have done. So I feel like there is, even though we don't consider Oberlin a research institution, there are some opportunities to do research that aren't available to you. And also I'll say too, the interdisciplinarity. I think most Tier 1 research institutions have a harder time doing interdisciplinary research than we do at Oberlin College, because just because of the nature of the pressures on you. So I feel like there's actually a niche within small liberal arts college for researchers that allows for a kind of creativity that can't happen at Tier 1. You have a lot less of your time to devote to research, because I spend so much time thinking about teaching and students and that sort of thing. So, there are obviously, if you want to focus your life on research, there are some serious costs to spending so much of your life on teaching. But the flip side too is we have you incredibly clever, smart students to be collaborators on the research. And that is both, I think, adds a lot to our creativity, but for Cindy and I, it's also really fun, to have people who are like, have fresh ideas on the world and are, sort of like excited about the newness of it. Like, that's really exciting for us to have you guys as collaborators. So anyway, I hadn't intended to give that sort of mind up there, but seems like the right thing to do, since you guys are in this whole winter term focused on research and how it fits into career. So there you go. I'm done. And we're probably done in terms of time too. Any final comments from any of you? All right, cool. Well, have a good week. Not a whole lot of expectations on our end between now and next week for you, but we'll check in a week from today.
Thank you.
Bye.